I had been a jeweler for most of my professional life, as we discussed last night. And when I decided to have children, I could no longer do metalwork because metalwork is so very toxic. You can't be pregnant and be polishing or working with cyanide or fumes or any of that. So I started exploring alternative art materials for jewelry. And I did the art show circuit for many years in alternative materials. You may know it, I called it metallized acrylic. You probably know it by the name of friendly plastic. Actually, it was wonderful to work with. And I really flatter myself that I could do some amazing things that nobody else could do with this stuff. But, you know, that kind of waned after a while and life got in the way. So, well, about 15 years later, in 2005, there was a young lady in our neighborhood after we moved back to Texas who needed a heart transplant. And as one of the scout leaders of our troop, I said, let's do a fundraiser. So one of the women in the troop, Claire Pramick, came to me and said, have you ever tried polymer clay? I said, oh yeah, I've tried that. It's nah. She said, no, try it now. So she brought me some blocks of Primo, and I sat down with them and started playing. And I was just astounded by the possibilities of the stuff because it's just sculpting with color. So I was absolutely hooked after a week. And we made hundreds of these little eternity symbol pendants for the child, sold them all, gave all of the proceeds to our family. We raised thousands of dollars doing it, and I thought, this stuff has potential. So after that, I stumbled across Tori Hughes' book on faux techniques, and it just blew me away. I could just see that there were so many things that you could do with this material that I love to do because I love recreating natural materials. And so I just started investigating every faux technique I could. I'm not the kind of person that can sit and focus really on one technique exclusively, like some people who cane and they only cane, or some people who sculpt and they only sculpt. There's so many techniques in so little time. There's so much to learn in this stuff. So I just keep going and going and going for every technique, but I always come back to the faux because that appeals to me in a way that nothing else does. And as the technology of polymer clay grows and new materials become available, for example, like the Kato medium, it's so clear and it's so durable and it's so easy to work with. It makes things possible that absolutely couldn't be done 20 years ago. I'm very, very shy around large crowds. They completely exhaust me. So I tend not to go to big social events because A, I'm afraid I won't know what to say, and B, I know that I will be so exhausted by the end of the day I will just drop into a coma when I go to bed. Like, for example, when I go home from Clay Carnival, I would estimate I'll spend a week just recovering in silence. I'm gregarious online because it's easier to be so, because I can pick and choose my times when I do it. Well, for example, I love to write, and I write better than I speak because writing is a very solitary experience, which is the thing that kind of led into this book that we're doing. My collaborator, Kim Schlinke, is just a master of faux techniques. She has made some amethyst and rhodochrosite and blue lace agate, and there's nothing she can't make that doesn't look as good or better than the real thing. So when she approached me for the idea of a book, knowing that I was going to Chicago for the IPCA retreat and a publisher was going to be there, she sat down and created a bunch of wonderful new techniques, and I sat down and created this really very tongue-in-cheek Holmesian storyline to go with it, and we're putting this all together in a new book on faux. So it'll have about 18 to 20 chapters on new faux techniques, many of which I think have never been published before. And along the way, you're going to run into this quirky storyline involving strange detectives and forgeries and every location and queer character in Austin that I can possibly fit in. I went to the retreat in Chicago pretty much on a dare a year and a half ago, and I had such a wonderful time. I mean, the polymer clay community is full of women like me, and I didn't really realize that until I got out and met them. When I was a jeweler, I was working in a purely practical sense, and actually I was making a lot of money doing that. But it was very stifling because it's a precious material, and everybody's very hidebound in their thinking about, oh, I have to do something important or recognizable with this. I can't be free and crazy with it. Polymer clay, you can do anything with it. You can have fun. I have an online shop, RNK Design, and so I sell a few things off of that from time to time. I actually mostly do tutorials these days. So that's my main source of income. But I love teaching, so that works for me as well too. And I'm astounded that I could have done it this long and still feel like a kid in a candy store every single morning when I go in the studio.